John Smoltz, world champ, Hall of Famer, joining us from the MLB Network in New Jersey via the Cowherd Global Satellite Network. Baseball season starts today. All right, the Mookie Betts deal. Dodgers actually don't, John, they don't just hand those things out. They had Machado, they wouldn't pay him. They had Bryce Harper, they got out of that. Zach Greinke, they let him go to Arizona. This is not an organization, despite their attendance and revenue, that hands out big money. They did for Mookie. Why? What does he bring the others did not?
Well, he brings stability, star power, and on and off the field. Look, he's a guy that has a rare combination that I said that baseball needs. They need the power guy that can run, that can play defense, that can steal bases, and that's what you're getting in Mookie Betts. I mean, he's a very connected, streaky offensive machine, and not to mention his defense speaks for itself too. So he's truly the five weapon. They've gotten the other side of their town, the greatest player in the world, and Mike Trout. So now the Dodgers can boast they've got player 1A, really. I mean, that's how good Mookie Betts can be. And I think the storyline is going to be year in and year out, Mookie Betts and Mike Trout talk in California. And don't be surprised if Mookie Betts doesn't win an MVP or two along the way during this contract.
Now, what does this do for Aaron Judge? Compare what Aaron Judge does. Now, again, really likable guy, big power. You know, he's Paul Bunyan-esque with that size. Is Aaron Judge in that kind of category of talent for the Yankees?
He is, but the one thing that, you know, you get a little concerned, he's going to have to prove he can go through a full campaign without being, you know, injury prone. That's the one knock on his size and stature in the game. He's one of my favorite players to watch play baseball. We don't see many players like him, built like him. And unfortunately, he's run into a few years of just some injuries that need to go away before he's going to get that monster deal. You just can't even fathom the numbers he's going to put up in his ballpark because it's tailor-made. I mean, there isn't a ballpark he can't hit a ball out of any part of the ballpark. But I want to see him be healthy. I want to see him play a full year and see what he can do because his skills – although be it, you know, people ask me, who would you pick between Mookie Betts, right fielder, and Aaron Judge, right fielder? And I said, honestly, it depends on which park they're playing in. Because if they're playing in Fenway, I'm taking Mookie Betts because he's another center fielder that can cover that incredible right field oddity that they have. If they're playing in Yankee Stadium, I'm taking Aaron Judge. And that's really how close these guys are, but how different they are from their body type. And I just want to see him stay healthy.
So yesterday, I was watching some highlights. The Astros three guys got hit by a pitch. And I think to myself, all right, we're going to see some of this, right? We're going to see some of it. Were you ever comfortable, John? I mean, what they did is viewed by baseball as players as really egregious, like next level, knew the pitch is coming. Would you have thrown at somebody? If somebody would have asked you to throw, would you have needed to be asked to throw at an Astro? Like, where would it land for you that they literally were cheating, knowing what John Smoltz was throwing, and that absolutely punctures your momentum, limits your numbers? Where do you land on this?
Yeah, so I was the type of player that was very conscientious of throwing a ball and what damage I could do to somebody. And so unless my manager, which rarely happened, was telling me that I had to do something for the protection of our players, which is really more of what my era was about, protecting your teammates when they got hit, I definitely wouldn't hit a guy because I couldn't get him out. And this scenario you're posing is certainly one that, you know, we anticipated in a full season what was going to happen to them from the backlash that they got. But I don't think, again, enough people know how to do it right. These pitches that we're seeing here can be easily described as it wasn't egregious, but anything that happens with the Astros is going to be looked upon as somebody did it on purpose because of the scenario that's sent out. If pitchers know how to command the baseball, which I argue not a lot of them do, then you're going to get these mistakes that hit the Astros, and right or wrong, you're going to basically say they did it on purpose. From a standpoint of an organization going into a season, having done what they did, that would have to come for me from the manager, and then you execute it and you're done. You don't keep doing it.
Yeah. So what is the feeling in baseball? So it's always been, in a long season, either the pitchers or the hitters, you can dominate April and May. And, for veteran players, they need more time. Now, this is not a marathon. This is a sprint. We're starting in the heat of July. So inside baseball, do you think pitchers or hitters have a slight or significant edge in the first part of this 60-game slate?
Yeah, it's a great question that I've been really trying to ponder as far as, what information are we getting? It's hard to follow what these inter squads were like. All I know is if you're the Yankees or you're the Nationals, you're tired of facing your own pitchers, which are pretty good. I think the hitters actually are going to have a little more advantage than typically that would happen in the start of the season. The pitchers would have an advantage. The weather, you said, is so important for hitters and the ball traveling. I mean, the ball's going to jump. And so pitchers typically are going to need a start or two to get accustomed to the up and down and just the adrenaline rush of pitching in a game that counts. And so I'm going to give the hitters a slight advantage. I did not think this was going to be the case 3 months ago. I thought the hitters would be at a bigger disadvantage because what you're going to see early on is managers trying to figure out how to manage the first week of the season. Meaning, do they try to steal wins? Do they access every one of their bullpen guys? See, the limits that were put on baseball over 162, you don't think you could have now, meaning relievers going 3 in a row, whereas a no-no in 162. I don't think you can say that now. I'd have a reliever pitch 3 games in a row, knowing that the season's shorter. So many more components come into this with the strategy that can be employed to win a baseball game, especially from teams that typically didn't have a chance when the season started. In theory, over 162 is going to make this so exciting. And I would be very leery of the teams like the Marlins, like the Royals, like the teams that we just kind of discarded into a rebuilding season. There's only going to be a handful of teams that really don't have a chance in this 60 games, but everybody else sure does.
Yeah, I saw an over-under the other day, like Fox Bet, and I couldn't believe how many teams were between like 30 wins and 35. I mean, if you finish, 6 games out, that's like significant this year. So I think it's going to be playoff baseball feeling very quickly. It is interesting with no fans, excuse me. So as a pitcher, you're on the mound. And, you come out with your best stuff, but you get into these middle innings and you're really scrapping. And I think to myself, God, if I was at home at Yankee Stadium and I got not much left in the tank, that juice of the Bronx could get me through a tough inning. That juice in Atlanta, that crowd. Or am I wrong in that you guys are on the mound, you totally tune out fans. They've never gotten you. You've never punched a guy out based on energy. Like I do think for a pitcher, I can't imagine being at home in front of 60,000 people at Yankee Stadium or 32,000 at Fenway, and that juice doesn't help you rear back and give you a little something, and that's all gone now.
Absolutely. I think you're going to see personalities really come into play that affect the player and those confines you're talking about. For example, not to pick on players or use them in an adverse way, but a guy like Stroman for the Mets, an energy-type pitcher, feeds off the crowd, feeds off the moment. He uses all of that. Or a hitter like Tim Anderson, who loves the flair, and he had a fantastic year. Those guys are going to have to manufacture that because it's not going to be there for them. And so the guys that are disciplined, a guy on the opposite spectrum like Kluber, he's very emotionless on the mound. That's not going to bother him. He's not going to he doesn't use that. So I'm intrigued to watch the players that are going to be so motivated internally that nothing else is going to take away from their discipline. Like the guy we're seeing right now in Clayton Kershaw. He doesn't need the crowd, but he feeds off the crowd too. So you have this hand-in-hand kind of battle of here's the thing to look for. In the second or third week of the season, players on teams that were expected to win or maybe not fall 5 or 6 games out. What happens? Do players drift? Do they lose focus because the environment of 60 games and no fans? These are the kind of things that are going to be a challenge for a lot of players who are trying to go into this with no experience. I know for me as a player, I had a hard time my first 3 years playing in front of 1,500, maybe 2,000 at Fulton County Stadium. I heard vendors. I heard noises. I drifted. I thought of things on the mound I should never have thought of. I learned how to put that away. But as a veteran, after 20 years, I would have learned in this environment, challenge myself with little games, little goals that I had each game to be able to stay locked in. I needed to challenge myself. That worked for me. Other guys might have a benefit from no fans with the pressure being off in a city where there's so much expected, like Philadelphia. I think the Phillies might thrive, not because they don't have a good team, but because the pressure for them to have a good team with their fan base. They have the greatest fan base that is against the visitor, but can turn against the home player if he doesn't get it done. That's not going to be there. So maybe guys have better years in cities like that.
It's funny. John, it's so funny that I grew up and the Braves were terrible, but they had really interesting players like Jeff Burroughs and Ralph Garr. I mean, they had good players. I forget that your early years, because I think of John Smoltz and I think of packed houses and World Series. You played on a crappy team or too early. You did.
First 3 years, we were bad, terrible. Matter of fact, I remember going in my first, when I just got there, I was trying to find out all the places to go. I went into a comedy shop to just kind of kick back, and every joke was about the Atlanta Braves. And it was awful. It was funny at first and then awful. It's like, I'm telling that's about us. And so, you learn how to deal with those environments. Athletes are creatures of habits. This is a challenge because the creature of habit has been thrown away. Rules that they have to abide by, of course, uncomfortable places you're going to be that you're not used to being. And then once you get in that between those white lines, there is a difference between the great ones that can focus with no fans there and the ones that can focus with 40, 50,000. Yeah. And that is going to be a challenge. Good thing that they had these times in these inner squads to get used to it, because it would be very eerie if they had to just jump into something that they've never done they've never done this before.
A champ in 95, Hall of Famer John Smoltz at the MLB Network in New Jersey. Good seeing you, bud. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to this year, and we'll talk again. Thanks again.
All right.
Download the all-new Fox Sports app now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.